Hi, and welcome to the workshop. In this volume, called Photo Video Fusion, you're going to learn the tools and the technique behind blending your still images with full video. Now, this term, fusion, applies to what you're seeing right here on the screen. Fusion is the natural integration of video and images into a complete slideshow production. Take a look at any of the media around you. You're seeing still and video imagery naturally in the same setting. And this really is fusion at its heart. It's not just about slideshows. It's about the blend of media which makes your shows better. Let's get started. So to begin using video, your first step is, of course, you have to know how to bring that video from your system and make it part of your show so that it's playing in your show just like the video that you see taking place right here. Now, the thing that's going to make this a lot easier for you is that working with video in ProShow is essentially identical to working with any of the other image layers that you already include as part of your shows on any normal show project that you might be doing. So let's just start right there, the very basics of getting a video from your file list and into your show. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, this is very, very easy. Just to demonstrate this, we're going to select a video of a puppy, and we're going to make this part of the show. And just as if you were working with an image layer, I'm simply going to select this and drag and drop it into the slide list, just as I would with any normal image. And what you can see when I complete that process is the new slide appears and it begins an importation process, which is described for you there, and the progress is updated as the video is added to the show. Now, you may notice, first and foremost, that your images don't have to import. So what is it about videos that causes them to be imported into your system rather than simply popping up as part of your show? Well, this comes down to the way video files work. Videos are significantly larger files than images. And the reason for that is because video files are essentially a big collection of images that are all linked together into one single file. So if you take a look at a video that's playing, for example, this hockey video, as you can see motion here, or this video that features the puppy, what you're actually seeing is a sequence of still images which are played back rapid fire in order, and that creates motion. So it's just like a flip book. Motion is made by seeing a very rapid fire series of images. Same thing that we did when we first created film. It's just in a digital format, and of course much more high resolution and up to date. But the simple fact remains that video files are large because video files are essentially a big collection of images. Now what this means is ProShow has to interpret all of the data from those images when you drag that video into your show. And that takes place during the import. So import can take a different amount of time depending upon your system specs. The faster your system is, the more quickly it can import video. And of course there's also the size of the video to keep in mind. And this brings me to the video properties. Now, right there, I've double-clicked on my first slide, which features this hockey video. And this has opened my slide options. Now, if you're following along, I'd like you to go to the Layers and then to the Layer Settings tabs. And here you'll be taken to a window which features all of the various configuration settings that you can use for your layers. Now, what I want to focus on specifically here are the details of this video file, because understanding what this file is made up of is going to help you better understand exactly what makes video tick. So if you look down here in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that we have some basic information about this file. We can see the dimensions of it, that is the resolution, so it's 640 by 480. That's a pretty common 4:3 resolution. It's slightly lower resolution than what you would see on a DVD. You can also see the file size. There the file size is listed as right around 23,000 kilobytes, which translates to just around 24 megabytes, rounding up. Then we can see the type of file is a video file, and the duration is about 1 minute and 38 seconds. Now, this is some basic information on the video. We can take a look at some more in-depth information by clicking on the Properties icon, which appears here just underneath the layer summary. If I select the Properties icon, you'll notice that we can get a bit more information about the file. Here we can see the file name, once again the resolution and the size, the type of file, the length of the video, then the bits per pixel. If you're not familiar with that from a technical standpoint, don't worry about it. Just remember that higher is better, and 24 is on the high end. The amount of color space available, and any metadata. Metadata can show up in videos, but it's much more common in images, and that's things like any information about what device was used to capture the photo, timestamps, things like that. So there you can get a good in-depth look at the information about your video file. Now, there are two things that I want you to keep in mind here that really set video apart from images. First, we have the length. Video files actually have a duration, and that's independent of the slide time. Now, we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in just a moment, but keep in mind that videos have their own length and your slides have their own length. Then we also have the file size. You're not going to find too many 24 megabyte images. They certainly do exist, but they're relatively uncommon. And the reason this video file is 24 megabytes is because essentially the video is made up of an entire sequence of images at 640 by 480. So you're looking at a very grand amalgamation of 640 by 480 images all pressed together in sequence to make this video. Now, let's take another look at the video properties. To do this, I'm going to open Windows Explorer. That's the same kind of thing as if you were to open up my computer. So I'll just bring this window up on screen. And here I'm looking at the video folder that I'm using on my hard drive to add these videos into the show. And here we can see, for example, the hockey practice video that I added just a moment ago. You again can see that the file type is a video file. In this case specifically, it's a WMV. That stands for a Windows Media Video. Now, if I right-click on this file and select Properties, once again here in Windows, I can get a summary of exactly what this file is. Now, the thing that I really want you to focus on here is the actual type of video. As we can see here, a WMV. Again, this is a Windows Media Video file, and this specifically refers to the codec that's used to view this video. A codec is essentially like a code language. It's information that's used to write the video in shorthand. So you can think of like a court reporter who writes the details of a court session in shorthand so that they can keep up with everything that's going on. If you were to read something that was written by a court reporter, you probably wouldn't be able to read it, but anyone who's versed in that code language would be able to read it just as if it had been written in plain English. And that's essentially exactly what a codec does. It writes the data from the video in a shorthand that you need a key to decrypt, and the key is that codec. Now, ProShow 4.1 has made the import of videos using codecs much easier. If you select Edit and go to Preferences, under the Playback section here on the left, you'll notice that there's a video importing section. And this section has a checkbox that says Avoid using Direct Show when possible. What this means is that ProShow is perfectly prepared to import any video you throw at it, regardless of whether you have the codec or not. So, gone are the days of needing to have all of the codecs installed. All you really need to focus on is simply dragging and dropping your video right into the slide list, just as I've done right here. Now, that said, let's take a look at some of the settings that are available for configuring a video layer specifically. And we'll do that with our puppy here in slide number 2. To access these settings, we're going to double left click on slide number 2, and this will take us back into the slide options. Then we're going to go to the Layers and then to the Video Settings tabs. The Video Settings tabs have all of the specific tools that we use to configure video layers that are present on a slide. And so here you can see that we've got a lot of just general information available for us here. First, it shows us the length of this particular video clip. It's 35 seconds long. Then you can see that we have a host of pretty self-explanatory options. Option number 1 is looping, and as it says right here, this will cause the video to loop until you reach the end of the slide. Now remember, I mentioned just a few moments ago that the time of your video and the time of your slide are independent of one another. So if I were to change this slide to be 60 seconds long, just by changing the slide time, then what would happen is the video would end before the slide ended. And when this occurs, the video stops. So let me demonstrate this for you. I'm going to change the slide time to 60 seconds and click on OK. Now, with that done, if I scrub through to about the halfway point, what we'll see is that the video will come to a stop, but the slide continues playing. So here you can see the video is finished, so the final frame of the video is displayed, but as you can see by the indicator, this slide is still going on. Now, the reverse is true. If your slide is shorter than your video, let's say I change the slide time to 15 seconds, when I reach the end of this particular slide, it will simply stop whether the video is finished playing or not. So, the slide time and the video time are independent of one another. And that's a good thing to keep in mind, because your timing is always going to factor in to how you include videos as part of your shows. Now, let's go back into the options. Back here in the options, there's another very useful button that appears here on the right side that says Sync Slide Time. What this button does is it automatically changes the time of your slide to match the time of your video. So right now, because of the adjustments I've made, my total slide time is 21 seconds. But my video clip is 35 seconds. So if I click on the Sync Slide Time button, this is going to change the time of my slide to match my video clip. To see this reflected, click on OK, and here you can see that the 29 seconds of my slide time combined with the 6 cumulative seconds of transition in and transition out gives me about 35 seconds to play that video. So the Sync Slide Time button will automatically synchronize your slide times to match the length of your video. The looping option, as we were looking at a moment ago, again is pretty self-explanatory. If you have a video that comes to an end before the slide is finished, enabling this option just by clicking on it will cause that video to loop back to the beginning and start playing again from the start. Then we have the speed option, and we'll talk about the speed option in more detail here in just a moment. Before we move over to speed, though, I'd like you to take a look at the video sound settings. Now, you'll notice that this particular video does have some audio associated with it. Audio inside a video, as you can hear here, can be configured independently of the actual visuals. So, let me give you an example. If I decided that I just wanted the visuals and I didn't want to hear any of the audio here, I can simply reduce the video volume to 0%. And then if I play back through it a second time, we won't hear any volume because we've simply turned it off for the video. So you can control the volume and the fade in or fade out for the video's audio section independently of the visuals. And that comes in really handy when you're trying to do something visual and really control what audio complements you want to include. Now let's talk about the speed for just a moment, and we're going to then build a quick example. When it comes to speed, you can increase the playback speed of the video or decrease the playback speed of the video. To increase it, you drag it to the right. To decrease it, you drag it to the left. Now what I want you to notice is that when the video speed is at 100%, your audio settings are available. But if I increase the speed at all, the audio settings are no longer available. And you'll notice that the video plays back much faster. It looks like it's kind of going in fast forward. The reason the audio options go away is because if the audio were to be playing when you've made this change, it would sound very distorted. It would be almost like listening to the Chipmunks sing a song. And the same is true for slowing a video down. If you slow a video down to something much dramatically slower than the original, if the audio were playing in this situation, it would sound very low, slow, and distorted. So you can control the speed at which a video plays, but just remember that if you make any changes to that speed, the audio for that video will be disabled. Now, let's just use a quick practical example of why you might want to change the speed of your video. Let me restore this one back to the way it was, and I'm going to come back to my file list and select this video of a looping curtain, which is provided along with the Chapter 2 material. I'm going to drag and drop this curtain down into the slide list to create a new slide. And here we can see that the video is quickly imported. What I'm going to do here is just set this curtain up as a moving backdrop for an image. Very simple. So to do this, I've created the slide. I'm going to open the options for the slide to get started. And what I want to do first is speed up how quickly this curtain moves. Let's take it up to about 150%, just to make it a bit more interesting, just like so. Now, with that done, I'm also going to enable the looping option, just in case this video comes to an end before I'm done watching the slide. I'll decide on my slide time in just a moment. Now, the last thing that I want to do is make sure that this video fills up my entire slide frame. Notice that I have some blank spots on the left and right edges. To correct this, I'll go back to my Layer Settings tab, and here I'm going to change the scaling, just like I would for an image layer, to fill frame. Now you can see that it takes up my entire view. I'm almost ready to go. With this done, I'll click on OK, and I'm going to bring an image in to use in the foreground. So I'll switch over to my image folder here in the folders list, and I'll select this signpost here, and I'm just going to add this as a new layer. And here's a very useful keyboard shortcut. Hold down Control, drag, and drop that image right on top of the slide while you hold down Control. This will add that layer right on top of the slide. Now, just a few quick adjustments, and we'll have a good moving backdrop. I'll double-click on the slide once again to open the options, and I'm going to select layer number 1, which is my image layer. Let's switch over to the Editing tab. Here in the Editing tab, I'm going to enable a drop shadow for layer number 1 just by clicking on the option. And then I'm going to click on my layer in the preview window and use my mouse wheel to reduce the size of the layer just a little bit. If you don't happen to have a mouse wheel, remember that you can always go back to the Layer Settings tab and adjust your zoom slider to the left to reduce the size of that particular layer. Then to finish things, click on OK. Let's set this slide to be about 5 seconds long with a 1-second transition. With that done, click on Play, and there you can see that I have a moving curtain serving as a backdrop for my image in the foreground. So just a first glimpse at the kinds of things you can do by combining photos and videos together into Fusion. No matter what kind of video work you're doing, you're probably going to find a point where you're interested in making a clip. That is, you don't want to display the whole video, you just want to use a certain portion of it. What we have here is a longer clip available. It's about 3 minutes long, and this one is a sequence from Ed Wood's illustrious masterpiece, Plan 9 from Outer Space. And we can see that playing right here in the slide list. Now, what we're going to do with this particular clip is we're going to take its original long version and we're going to cut it into 2 pieces using a feature we have built into ProShow called the video trimmer. And this video trimmer is going to allow us to make a simple clip and basically edit the film down to just the parts that we want to include and cutting out everything that we don't. So not only are we going to make a clip, we're also going to see how we can make a clip from the same video twice. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I'll delete the video that we currently have in here, and we'll get started with the very basics of bringing the video into the slide list. And so just as you've seen before, adding the video is just as simple a process as dragging and dropping it. Now, you'll notice that there was no time needed for import this time around. We just used a little bit of film editing to make sure that you didn't have to wait for that sequence. So it comes right in. On your end, you can expect that that'll take some time to import, just based on the available system resources and the speed of your computer. And keep in mind, this is a bit longer a clip, so it can take longer than the others available to bring into your show. So here we have our clip. And if we take a look at the properties for this clip by opening the options for this particular slide, and then clicking on the Properties button down here at the bottom of the Layers summary, we can see that this clip is about 3 minutes and 20 seconds long. Now, because of that, we don't want to have just one individual slide that's a full 3 minutes. What we're going to do is cut this up so that we're focusing on just one particular piece of it. So let's start by doing that. To make a clip, we're going to work our way to the Layers and then to the Video Settings tab. Now, one of the buttons that I overlooked when we took a look at these settings was the Trim Video button. This button opens up the video trimmer, and this is what you use to create clips out of any video you've added into your show. To open this up, just go ahead and click on Trim Video. Now, here we can see the video trimmer. It's a rather imposing group of options and visuals available, but let's break it down one piece at a time, and I think you'll find that it's actually quite intuitive. Here in the upper left-hand corner, we have the general preview window. So if we're taking a look at any point in time in the video, or simply playing the video back to see what it looks like, it's going to show up there in the upper left. Here on the right edge, we have the starting and ending position previews. And these appear because you are making clips by choosing where you want the video to start and where you want the video to end. So these areas will display the first and last frame in the clip that you've created. Beneath the preview windows here at the top, you have the video timeline. The video timeline shows you what's happening in the video all the way from the start to the finish. And one of the great things about the video timeline is you can simply drag your mouse cursor along the timeline to see exactly what's happening at that point in the video. So you'll notice that I'm able to quickly scrub through different portions of the video just by moving my mouse cursor to the left and right over the video timeline. And this particular function ties directly into how you go about making your clips. So most of what's in this clip is a sequence where a passenger airliner has a bit of a close encounter with a UFO, and what we'd like to do is copy this setup so that we can just focus on the arrival of the UFO and then some visuals of the UFO itself flying away, and we'll trim everything else out. So for our first clip, let's just focus in on the pilots. So if I scrub my mouse cursor along, we can see that the pilots have their encounter here at about 1 minute 10 seconds, as is displayed just underneath the preview. So I want to have just a few seconds of pilot banter, so why don't we get things started here at about 56 seconds. So with my mouse cursor right here on the video timeline, I'm going to left click one time. And you'll notice that that placed a marker where my mouse cursor was located. What I'm going to do is tell ProShow to start this video clip at my marker's location. To do that, I click on the right-facing flag icon, which appears just here underneath the video timeline. This is the Start Playback button. When I click on this, it sets the starting position for the video right where I placed my marker. The next step to making a clip is to figure out where I want it to end. So I think I'll have the video end right about the time the pilots look out the window to see that UFO. So that's going to be at about 1 minute and 14 seconds. So I'll left click once again to place a marker, and then I'll click on the left facing flag icon, which is the End Playback button. Click on that, and there you can see that my clip is now the highlighted portion which appears between the start and end markers. And of course, also notice that the starting and ending position frames have updated to show me exactly what I'm going to see in the very first frame and the very last frame of the video. Now, if you find yourself wondering what exactly a frame is, remember I mentioned that videos are made up of a bunch of individual images all stuck together in sequence. Frames are those individual images. So, when you hear somebody talk about a frame, that is that particular image in the sequence of the video. So, here we have our starting and our ending positions. To save this clip, all we have to do is click on OK. Now, one thing to remember about the video trimmer is that it is completely non-destructive. What that means is it doesn't change anything about your original video file. It only changes the way ProShow works with it. So it's not going to cause any harm or do any damage to the source video file that you're using. Now, with this clip made, let's play a preview of the slide, and what you're going to see here is we have the video sequence that we created. The UFO is going to show up while the pilots are sitting here, and they'll have their brief encounter, and when this occurs, We're going to see they lean over to look out the window, and that will be the end of our clip. But you'll notice that the video just stops. Now, why is that? Well, that's because we've made a much shorter clip. But you'll notice that our slide time is still currently set to be about 3 minutes and 20 seconds long. So we're going to need to change the slide time so that it matches up with the clip we've created. This is something that we can do very easily, once again, by using that Sync Slide Time button. Click on the Sync Slide Time button. That's going to change the timing of this slide to match the video clip. And we'll take a look at that in just a moment. Before we finish this particular slide, though, let's go over to the Layer Settings tab, because you'll notice that right now we're not filling the entire slide frame. We have blank spaces on the left and right side. So once again, to fix this, we can just change the scaling from Fit to Frame to Fill Frame, just like so. And then click on OK. Here you can see the slide time has been updated to reflect the change that we made. And now, before we create the second clip, let's just insert a bit of a placeholder between these two slides that we're going to create so that you can see that it really is a completely separate clip. So I'm going to right-click on the slide list, choose Insert, and select Title Slide. This is going to create a new blank slide and take me directly to the Captions options. And here in the Captions options, let's just do something simple like type in "and then" with an ellipsis. Let's change the font to something just simple, common. An Arial will work pretty well for this. And then let's make it italic. And we'll leave it just in the center, like so. With that done, click on OK. Let's change the time of slide number 2 to, about 2 seconds with a 1-second transition. Now, with that done, we're going to create the second part of the clip. And this is exactly what we did before. To create 2 clips from the same video, you actually have to add the video twice. So to make another clip, I'm going to drag the same video right back into the slide list to create a new slide. With this done, once again, I'll double-click on the slide to open the options, and then I'm going to go to the Layers, and then to the Video Settings tab. Once again, I'm going to click on Trim Video. Now, I'm going to scrub through the video to locate just the sequence where we have this flying saucer. So it starts flying right about here, so I'll left-click and set my starting position. That's at about 2 minutes, 3 seconds. And then the flying saucer gets done right here at around there. So I'll set my ending position. And that's at about 2 minutes, 16 seconds. So with that done, click on OK. Then remember to make sure that your slide time is synchronized to your new clip. So click on Sync Slide Time. And then let's go over to the Layer Settings tab. And let's change the scaling once again to Fill Frame to make sure that it takes up our entire display area. Then we click on OK, and let's take a look at our newly edited version of the film. Here we have our pilots and their brief communication in the cockpit. And as we reach the end of this slide, the UFO will make its arrival. Then we cut out anything in between the two, and we have our UFO arrive, which does its flyover sequence to go and land in a cemetery of all places. So remember, creating video clips is very, very easy to do. It doesn't take much time, and always keep in mind that if you want to make multiple clips of the same source video, just add that source video into your show multiple times. That's all it takes. One of the things that's really important to understand once you start working with video as a regular feature in your shows is that video is treated in ProShow as a layer, just like any other image layer that you would normally work with. And that is a key part to what makes video such a natural item to include and as easy as it is to include in the shows that you create. So let's take some time now to take a look at how exactly video is as flexible as any other image layer. So I'm going to start with slide number 1 here, featuring a video graciously provided by photographer Peter Atherton. And I'm going to open the options for this particular video. And we're going to go to the Layers and the Layer Settings tabs. Now, you've probably worked with a lot of image layers as you've spent some time with ProShow. So you know that all of the settings that you work with here in the Layer Settings options are available to manipulate the size and the position of any images that are appearing on your slide. Well, notice that a video layer appears here in the layers list just like any image layer, and it has the same borders to control the arrangement, the size, and the rotation of your layer just like you would with any image. And so, as we've seen previously, the scaling options work for videos just as they do for images. The same options are applied in exactly the same way. But what about position, zoom, or rotation? Well, let's just use the preview window. Here, I can change the position simply by dragging and placing that video wherever I'd like it to appear within the slide frame. I can also change the zoom by using my mouse wheel or by dragging the zoom slider. So if I wanted to zoom out on this video and just place it over here on the left edge of the slide frame, I can do that very easily. There's no re-rendering required, no time spent waiting for ProShow to reprocess the video. I just reduce its size and place it over there on the left like I would with any other piece of image information that I might include on the slide. So it's really important to keep in mind that you adjust, change, and work with your videos just like you would with any other layer. They work exactly the same way. This also applies to another excellent side, which are the editing options. So let me switch over to slide number 2 by clicking the right arrow icon down here in the bottom of the options. And here we have a slide that features someone playing a guitar. Now remember that the editing options are designed to control the visual appearance of a layer. And these options can be used with a video just as they would with an image. So, an excellent example is found right here in the Adjustments pane. Let's just try the Auto Adjustment button. When you click this option, it automatically corrects the colors inside that layer to make sure that it's a little bit more balanced. And you can see here that those color adjustments applied to my video just like it would to an image. I can then play this back and that color correction is present all the way throughout. This can be combined with all sorts of other editing features. For example, if I wanted to change the size of this and then give it a white outline, and let's say just an interesting white drop shadow off the bottom corner to go up against our black background, there we can see that when I click on OK, the video will still play with its outline and its drop shadow as well as its color correction all in place. So the same editing tools that you use to adjust the appearance of your layers can be used with your videos. This also includes things like colorize so that you can change the overall color of your video file. Now, one of the most common tools that's used when you're trying to work with layers are slide styles. Slide styles are designed to create entire effects just by creating what is essentially an action. The entire effect is assembled for you by ProShow. And it's a very natural tool to use as part of your layer configuration because it saves you a lot of time and it allows you to make a lot of effects that you might not otherwise have created. So let's just take an example of a slide style. With this current slide selected with my guitar, I'm looking for a particular slide style called Old Film Projector. And that's this style right here. This is available in Style Pack 2. And this particular style makes your layer look as if it's being viewed on like old 8mm film. Now, you'll notice that most slide styles have some recommended times. This one recommends a 6-second slide time and a 1-second transition time. So, regardless of the video time, let's go ahead and change it to that. So I'll click on my slide time option here at the bottom, change my slide time to 6 seconds and my transition out to 1 second, and click on OK. With that done, I'll apply the slide style simply by clicking on Apply and then click on OK. Now, the real magic of this is even though this slide style was designed with images in mind, it still works perfectly well with video content too. So I can click on OK and play this back, and now you can see that I've adjusted my video so that it looks like it's coming off of an 8mm projector rather than simply being taken with the latest in high-def camera recording. So slide styles can be applied directly to a slide that contains nothing but video layers, just as it can with any slide that contains image layers. Let's go back to slide number 1. I'll open the options here, and let's choose a more dynamic slide style. The one I have in mind is called Juxtapose 3, this one right here. This one calls for an 8-second slide time with a 0-second transition. So we'll change the slide time to 8 seconds and the transition time to 0. Now again, you don't have to use the recommended times. This is just what usually works best with the effect. So with that selected, again, we have one video layer. Click on Apply, click on OK, and that style is then created for you. Now, this uses a duplicate of the video layer, so essentially you have two video layers. The one thing you're going to want to be aware of is if your video has sound in it and you've duplicated it, you might get a lot of overlapping sound. To make sure that this doesn't happen, click on the Layers tab, go to the Video Settings tab, and then for each one of your videos here that you don't want to make noise, simply select it and turn the volume down to nothing. Just like so. With that done, click on OK, and let's take a look at our styles. Here we have our first one, which combines video together with the same video using the same slide style effects that we've already seen applied to images. So, the main lesson here is that slide styles are great time savers that most people associate with images, but keep in mind that it works just as well with videos or even a combination of images and videos. And the reason for that is because video is a layer just like any other image. So let's start considering some practical uses for video and some real-world examples that you can use to embellish and improve your shows through the use of Video Fusion. Here I've got 3 individual slides. The first one, as you see here, features some clouds rolling through the sky during the day. Then we have a little switch over and we have some clouds rolling through the sky at night. And then finally, once we get to the end of this particular video, we have a shot of a cathedral. So the question becomes, how can we really bring this cathedral to life by combining it together with some video? That is, how can we create a living still? And that's exactly what we're going to tackle right now. So to do this, I'm going to start by deleting these first 2 slides which feature my video. With that done, I'm left with just a slide here that is the image of this cathedral. Now, the nice thing about this particular image is that all of the black space that you see around the outside edges here is actually transparent. We used Photoshop to crop out the sky from this photograph. So what we've effectively created is a cathedral with a blank sky. And we can replace that sky with, well, whatever we'd like. And this is where the idea of a living still becomes a wonderful way to improve your slides. What we're going to do to get started is we're going to take our moving daytime clouds and we're going to place them behind our cathedral to make it look as if the image may be still, but the sky is fully animated. So, to do this, let's go ahead and drag in this video of the clouds by clicking on it, holding Control, and then dropping it right on top of slide number 1. That's going to get us started. Now, before we can have anything close to a final slide, we're going to need to arrange these layers a little bit better. So let's start by double-clicking on the slide to open the options, and let's go to the Layers and then to the Layer Settings tabs. Now, the first thing is to bring my cathedral to the top. So I'm going to select it and move it up so that it becomes layer number 1. Now, you'll notice that the cathedral cuts off here on the right edge, and I don't want it to do that, so I'm going to change the scaling of this layer to fill frame. That way, there's no points where my cathedral abruptly stops. Now, you'll notice that my video of the clouds has the same problem. It's done in 4:3, and I have a 16:9 slide, which means that I have a widescreen slide and a standard, roughly square definition video. So to make this fit, I'll again change the scaling to fill frame. That way, I have everything nicely laid out. Now, without needing to make any other changes, let me play this back, and here you can see that without doing much of anything, we have an excellent living backdrop for our picture of the cathedral. Now, before we call this finished, why don't we adjust the slide time just a little bit? I'm going to click on the total time button here. I'm going to change the time for this slide to about 5 seconds, and I'm going to change the transition out time to about 1 second, and then click on OK. And we'll play it back again just to see what our final result looks like. So there we have it. We have a cathedral with a moving backdrop. Now, what I want to do here is set up a follow-up slide that makes it look as if we go from daytime to nighttime. And this can be done just by a clever, quick transition from one slide to another. To do this, let's start by bringing in the nighttime clouds. So we'll select Clouds Night and then drag and drop that video, once again, right into the slide list. Now, with that done, we're going to need the cathedral to appear on top of it. So we'll go back to the image folder, select the cathedral, hold down Control, and drop it right on top of slide number 2. Now, with that done, once again, we just need to do a little bit of image arrangement here to make sure that everything lines up nicely. So, let's double-click on slide number 2 to open the options. And remember, once again, we're going to want to change the scaling for layer number 1 to fill frame. This is going to place it into exactly the same position as the same image on slide number 1. And when they're in the exact same position, that means that you are not going to see a change from one slide to the next, as far as the cathedral goes. Now, the nighttime clouds, you'll notice we don't need to change the scaling for. And that's because this particular video was filmed at 16:9. It's a widescreen video, so it fills my widescreen slide frame perfectly. With that done, let's change the slide time. Once again, we'll change the slide time itself to 5 seconds, and we'll leave the transition out at 1 second. Now, with that done, let's take a look at what we have. Go back to the beginning here. We can see our clouds during the day, and as we reach the end of this slide, it transitions into our clouds at night. Now, we're almost finished, but there's one other thing that I'd like to do here to really make this pop. And it's a subtle change, but these kinds of small changes can really have a big impact on the overall quality of your show. You'll notice that as we do our day to night switch, the color of our cathedral stays just as bright as if it were being hit by sunlight. Well, that works well in this particular slide, but it looks a little out of place in slide number 2. So let's correct this by just dropping down the overall brightness of the cathedral. So we'll open the options for slide number 2, and we'll go to the Editing tab. Here in the Editing tab, select layer number 1, and let's start by reducing the white point a bit to drop it down in its general white level, and then let's decrease the black point as well to really darken that layer down. About -30% on both of them should really do the trick. With that done, click on OK. Now you can see that the cathedral is much darker. Let's compare this to see how much of a difference it makes. Here we have daytime at the cathedral in slide number 1, and then we switch to a much more ominous nighttime at the darkened cathedral with the arrival of the moonlight in slide number 2. So remember, living stills can be combined with video to really make something impressive, and don't forget that even though you're working with video, those small details like the coloration of the cathedral in slide number 2 are really important to creating a cohesive and powerful show that has a lot of impact. Let's use some producer-specific features to really take Fusion up a notch. What we're going to do here is we want to take this video of some water moving across the surface of a pond, and we want to combine it together very gracefully with this image of some swans on the surface of the pond. So what we have is we have video content and we have still content. Now you have a lot of options that you can use to put these two together, combining them together as layers on a slide, stacking them on top of one another, all sorts of different things. But we're going to use one of Producer's most interesting features for composition called masking to directly integrate these two layers together on the same slide. And when we're done, they'll look as if they're very naturally blended together right on the same layer. So let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to construct this particular example using slide number 1, which already features the video. To get started yourself, open up the video, select the water video file, and then simply drag and drop it into your slide list. Once it's imported, let's move over to the image folder. And we're going to be working with this image right here, Swan 2. So once the video is imported, select Swan 2, hold down Control, and then drag and drop it right on top of the slide you've created. And that's going to get us started. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to take the water and display it on the left side of the slide frame. Then we're going to have a natural blend in the middle, which will blend directly into the swans on the right side of the slide frame. And we're going to do this once again using masking. So let's put this together. Double click on slide number 1 to open the options. Then we're going to move to the Layer Settings tab. Now I want my water video to be the topmost layer, so I'm going to select it and move it up to layer number 1. Now you'll notice that this particular video was recorded in 16:9, so it perfectly fits my slide frame. I don't need to go in and change the scaling. But what I do need to do is create a mask for this layer so that I can use that to display my swans in layer number 2. So here's how the mask works. We're going to create what's called an intensity or grayscale mask. This mask works by controlling what you can see of layer number 1 based on value. So here's the basic rule of thumb when it comes to working with an intensity mask. The rule is light reveals and dark conceals. So light value will show the image that's being masked, in this case the water, and dark value will hide that particular image, or in this case video. So to create this blend, we're going to make a mask out of a gradient, which works very, very well for intensity masks. So here's what we do. With layer number 1 selected, click on the Add Layer button. Then you're going to select Add Masking Layer, and from the flyout menu that appears, choose Add Gradient. This is going to open the Create Gradient window, and it will open the presets to mask and the type to linear for you automatically. The first step is to choose the preset that you want to use for your gradient. In this case, we'll use the one that's just one over to the right. You'll notice that we have light and dark, and then a gradation between the two. Remember, the rule is light reveals and dark conceals. So to split this particular image right down the middle, we're going to adjust the angle to a full 360 degrees. There we have light on the left and dark on the right. What this means is that everything on the left side of our masked layer, in this case the video of the water, we will be able to see, and everything on the dark side will be hidden. And because there's a gradation from light to dark here in the middle, it's going to be a soft transition from visible to hidden. So with this configured, click on OK. ProShow will then create the mask, set up the gradient, and attach it to the water. Now with this done, if I click on the swans, we'll be able to take a look at how this is blended before we make additional changes. There you can see that my video of the water is on top, and where the light color is located, it reveals the video, Where the dark color is located, it conceals it, which allows us to see layer number 2 underneath it. Now, to really finish this up, I'm going to need to adjust the position and the size of layer number 2 a little bit so that I can see both of my swans and so that I don't have this blank space on the right edge. So to do this, I'll double-click on the slide, select layer number 2, and let's just simply drag layer number 2 over to the right a little bit and then maybe zoom in on it just like so. With that done, click on OK. There we can see that I have blended those two layers very nicely right into one another. And if I play this back, you can see that the video still plays seamlessly as it's being masked along with the image. To complete this effect in its entirety, let's bring these images to life a little bit just by adding some motion. So, I'll open the options for the slide, and I'm going to go to the Effects and then to the Motion Effects tabs. And all I'm going to do is just create some very simple zoom. So with layer number 3 now, our swans selected, I'm going to select it in the ending position and just increase the zoom value by about 15%. And with that done, click on OK. Now if we play it back, we can see that we have the image layer zooming and the water. If you want to increase the speed at which the zoom takes place, remember, you can always change the time. So if I change the slide time to 6 seconds and the transition time to 1 second, we'll have a much more obvious motion. And there you have it. Remember that because video is a layer, all of the same features that you use with layers, including masking, are fully available for you to use as you construct your slides. So remember, the same kinds of masking techniques that you apply to your images can also be applied to your video. That's a serious example of fusion. Among all the other tools you have to work with video, it's important to remember that sometimes the most simple and seemingly small of changes can have some incredible impact on the mood, the feeling, and the experience of the individual slides or the entire show that you've included. And that's what we're going to take a look at now, is how you can make just a few small changes that can completely alter the mood of a video file that you're working with in your show. So what I'd like you to do is create a new slide using this guitar video right here, just as you've seen me do. With this new slide, we're going to create a basic mood that matches the feeling of this particular video. So if you take a look at it, we have, again, someone playing a guitar, we have a sunny afternoon, and the playing is relatively quick, so it looks like they're playing something that's a little bit faster paced, probably a bit more high energy. So what we can really go for to complement this video is a lighter mood and feeling. So that's exactly what we're going to do as our starting point. So to begin, let's change the time on slide number 1 to 15 seconds. And we'll leave our 3-second transition intact right there. Now what I'm going to do just to create the mood for this slide is bring in some upbeat music that is good and appropriate for the visuals that we're seeing here. To do this, I'm going to use an audio track taken from our Albums and Collages media source package. This track is called Go For It. Now, I'd recommend that you use any audio track that you have available that has a good upbeat, fast sound to it. So once you've chosen your track, we're going to add this as a sound rather than as part of the soundtrack. So to do this, you're going to select that audio file, drag and drop it right on top of slide number 1. When this is done, you'll see a speaker icon appear just beneath the slide thumbnail. Now, before we take a look at the newly established mood, I'd like to double-click on the slide to open the options, and we're going to go to the Sounds and then to the Sound Effects tab. Here you'll notice that you have an option which is checked by default that says Continue Playback of Sound after slide ends. Now, this is normal. If you have a sound effect that's longer than your slide, ProShow is going to assume that you want that sound effect to keep playing. In this particular case, since we're creating different moods on different slides, I'm going to uncheck this option to disable it. With that done, I'll click on OK. let's take a listen to what we've created here. So here you can see that we've created a nice, high energy, bright mood kind of a feel to go along with our video. Now we're going to go a complete opposite direction. Using the tools that we have available for adjusting video, we're going to take the exact same video file and we're going to change the mood completely. We're going to do something that's much darker, much slower, and much more somber. So before I do that, I'm going to create a blank slide right here just to separate these two examples. So I'll right-click on the slide list, choose Insert, and select Blank Slide. Then I'll change both the slide time and the transition time to 1 second. Now I'm ready to create my second slide, which is going to change the mood. So I'll go back to the video folder, and I'm going to bring in the exact same video that we were working with for slide number 1. And once that's imported, I'm going to change its slide time to 15 seconds as well, and give it a 3-second transition. Now with that done, remember that we're going for a much darker mood here in slide number 3. So my first steps are going to be to change the tone and the feel of this particular slide visually. Then we'll focus on the audio side of things. So I'll begin by double-clicking on the slide to open the options. And my first stop is going to be in the Layers and then the Editing tab. Now here in the Editing tab, remember that I can control the visual look and feel of my layers. And if we really want to darken this down and make it more somber, we can consider some common visual tricks like black and white, desaturating the color, things like that. One of the easiest ways to do this is simply to change my video to black and white using the Colorize option. I'm also going to give it some higher contrast by clicking on Auto to balance the levels, and then reducing the black point value to right around -20% or so. So now you can see I have a much darker, high contrast look to my video. Now I'm going to go to the Video Settings tab, and here I'm going to reduce the speed down to 25%. This is going to dramatically slow how quickly the video plays. So what I've done is I have reduced the speed and I've adjusted the color to make something that is far darker in both tone and appearance. To complement this, I'm going to need some darker audio as well. Now once again, I'm going to go to my audio folder and I have another track from the Albums and Collages Media Source collection. And once again, I'd recommend that you use any kind of music you have that has a much slower, darker feel to it. So once you've located a track that you'd like to use, again we're going to add this as a sound by dragging and dropping it right on top of slide number 3. Check for the speaker icon to make sure that it's attached. So let's compare these two. Here we have our original mood. Now as we reach the end of this, we'll take a look at the new mood that we've crafted. So there you can see we've adjusted the mood in such a way that it almost goes so far as to have an art house sort of a feel to it. It's much slower, it's much darker, but we used the exact same video for both examples. So don't forget, the ability to adjust the feel of an individual video doesn't rest solely in the video. The complements of audio and visual adjustments are incredibly powerful for use with your videos as well. So remember, the mood may be a small adjustment, but it's still incredibly important to the impact and the feel. Remember that ProShow treats videos as layers, just like any other image layer that you might find on your slide. And because of that, the same kinds of tools and techniques that you can use to work with layers can be used with videos as well. So all of the motion and effects and everything else that you would normally use with an image layer work beautifully when applied to a video layer. And that's what we're going to take a look now. What we're going to do here is we're going to craft this video layer so that it enters the slide with some visual changes and some motion, comes to rest, plays the video, and then exits the slide. Now we're going to do this in Producer, and then I'll show you how you can do it in Gold, because I have a Gold version of it ready to go as well. So let's go ahead and get things started. To kick off our example, we're first going to need to begin by working with a set amount of time. Now, it's typically easiest to set this kind of time before you go in and start making the effect, and that's where planning can be very valuable. So what we're going to shoot for here is a slide time of about 12 seconds or so. So we'll do 12 seconds of slide time and about a 1-second transition. With that done, we're ready to go in and begin setting up the motion for this particular layer. So let's open the options for the slide, and our first stop is going to be at the Slide and Background tab. What I'd like to do for this example is actually set our video layer against a white background. So to do this, I need to override the default black show background and then change the color to white. With that done, I'm ready to go in and set up the basic appearance of this layer. To do that, I'm going to go to the Layers and then to the Layer Settings tabs. Here, my first step is to reduce the zoom value of this layer so that it doesn't fill up my entire slide frame. I'm going to take this layer down to about 80% or so, and that should do the trick nicely. I also want to change the appearance of this layer a little bit. To do this, I'm going to go to the Editing tab. My first step here is to give this layer a little bit of a sepia look to it. I can do this by enabling the Colorize option and then changing the color to something that has that sort of orange yellowed sepia look. Now you don't have to be exact, just find something that you think works well and use that. Once you have that selected, click on Set Color to lock that selection in. Now I also want to give this layer a bit more visual depth. That is, I want it to stand out against the background more readily. To do this, I'm going to enable both an outline as well as a drop shadow. And that's going to help ensure that the layer really stands out when it's sitting against this white backdrop. Now as I currently have it configured, we'll see the video playing with the layer adjustments just like so. But again, I want to add some motion here to really demonstrate that the same kinds of tools and techniques that you apply to your image layers work just as well for your video layers. So let's get some motion configured. To do this, we're going to go to the Effects and then to the Motion Effects tab. Now what I'd like this layer to do is rotate in from the left side of the slide frame and come to a stop right here in the middle. It'll stay in the middle, visible, and then at the end it's going to rotate off the right edge of the slide frame. So to do this particular effect, I'm going to need to add 2 additional keyframes. So I'm going to place my keyframes at the 3-second mark and again at about the 10-second mark. So to do this, place your mouse cursor right around the 3-second mark on the keyframe timeline and double left click. That'll place a new keyframe right there at your mouse cursor. Go ahead and do the same thing at around the 10-second mark. Now with that done, we have our keyframes created and we're ready to begin setting up the motion. So let's select keyframes 1 and 2 by clicking in the blank space between them. In the keyframe 1 position, I'm going to move my layer off the left side of the slide frame by changing its pan value to -90. I'm also going to reduce its zoom value to 65%. And finally, I'm going to rotate the layer to the left by changing its rotate value to -90 degrees. Now you'll notice that as I made these changes, the values in keyframe 2 and 3 appear to be updating as well. This is normal behavior when you're working with keyframes because keyframe 2 is currently set to automatic. That's what the green light next to these values means. To restore this to its defaults, we'll take it back to manual mode. And you can do this by clicking on the green lights, which appears next to each one of the values. And you'll notice that as I do this, it brings the layer back into its original position. Now I'm going to select keyframes 2 and 3, and I'm going to click on the copy icon here on the left side. With this menu open, I'm going to select Copy Start to End. That's going to copy my settings for keyframe 2, which is my current starting position, to keyframe 3, which is my current ending position. And what this is going to do is ensure that the layer is held in place for the duration of this keyframe pair. Then I'm going to select keyframes 3 and 4. In the keyframe 4 position, I'm going to move the layer off the right side of the slide frame by changing its pan value to positive 90. I'll change the zoom value to 65%, and I'm going to rotate this layer to the right as it exits by changing the rotate value to 90 degrees. With this done, we have all of the motion set up for this particular layer. So from keyframe 1 to 2, it's going to rotate into view and come to a stop. From 2 to 3, it's going to remain there playing the video. And from 3 to 4, it's going to rotate off of the slide frame and go out of view. Let's play this and see what we have. Here we can see the layer drop into view. It remains in view while the video plays for a period of time. And then as we reach the end of the slide, the video pans out of view with a little bit of rotation and zoom change. Now this is something that we can construct using one slide in Producer thanks to the use of keyframes. Let's take a look at how this is done in Gold. Here you can see I have ProShow Gold open, and I have the same effect created. However, in this case, it takes 3 slides. Let me play this back so that you can see that it is, in fact, the same effect. You can see it playing through just as it was configured in Producer. But you may find yourself wondering why exactly it takes 3 slides to accomplish this effect. Well, this is because if we open the options for ProShow Gold and we go to the Effects and Motion Effects tabs, you'll notice that we have no keyframes. So the only motion we can create is between a starting position on the left and an ending position on the right. So to create a complex motion sequence, I have to create 3 slides. Each one of these slides acts basically like a keyframe pair. So slide number 1 will move the layer into view and it'll come to a stop. Then we skip to slide number 2 with a 0-second transition, and slide number 2 starts exactly where slide number 1 ended. Slide number 2 then features the video sitting in the center of the screen playing. Then we have a 0-second transition to slide number 3, and slide number 3 features that video from the same position it ended in 2, panning off of the slide at the end. Now this is quite a bit more complex to create. To do this kind of an effect, you first need to set up one slide. And once this slide's arrangement is complete, the starting and ending position, you can create the next slide by clicking on the copy icon and choosing Copy End to Next Slide. This will copy the ending position, as you see it here, to the next slide in the sequence. And that makes sure that your ending and starting position between those 2 slides remains identical. So you create the motion per individual slide and then copy its ending settings to the next slide. The last thing that you have to be cautious of is that the video will start over again from the beginning on each one of these slides unless you trim it. So what I've done is I've taken a look at the times that I have available here. 3 seconds for slide number 1, 5 seconds for 2, and 4 total for 3. And to make sure that the video plays continuously, as you can see here, when I skip from slide 1 to 2, there's no noticeable change in the video. And that's because I precisely trimmed the video to ensure that it's synchronized between those slides. So for the video in slide number 1, we can take a look in the Layers and Video Settings tabs. And here you can see that in the Trim Video section, I made a clip that's 3 seconds long, from 0 to 3. Then in my next slide, I made a clip that starts at 3 and goes to 8, which makes it a total of 5 seconds long, which matches up with my total time for slide number 2. Then for slide number 3, again, I will start this one at 8 seconds, and it ends at 12, because this slide is a total of 4 seconds long. And so that gives me the total time for my effect. So as you can see, you can create this same effect faithfully in Gold. It's just a bit more detailed and painstaking procedure because you don't have the same kinds of tools available in Gold as you do in Producer. But most important to remember is that your videos are a layer, just as an image is a layer. The same kinds of tools, techniques, and interesting effects that you apply to your image layers work just as well when they're applied to your video layers too. let's combine the media that you see here, both the images and video of this particular wedding, together to create what is an excellent embodiment of both technique and tools that are used to craft an excellent Fusion slideshow. What we need to do is we need to come up with a way to make a mini show that embodies all of the media that you see right here. And this miniature show should be an excellent expression of the kinds of things that you do when you want to make a show that really captures the essence of Fusion. So we're going to combine together all of the elements that we've worked with: video, images, captions, timing, arrangement, everything. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll begin by clearing the media out of my slide here at the bottom. And we need to get started with just a simple blank slide. It's not going to be long. It's just enough that we have a graceful fade in at the beginning of our miniature show. So my first step is to right-click on the slide list, choose Insert, and select Blank Slide. That's going to give me a nice blank slide to get started. I'll set the slide time to this to 1 second and the transition time to about 0.1 second, so it's over real quick. Now, we really want to start things off and make a good first impression. And since we are, after all, going for Fusion here, why don't we go ahead and get things started with a video? So, let's go to the video folder, and let's use this video right here, Atherton 2. So, once you've found this, drag and drop it into your slide list to get you started with a new slide. Now, with this slide created, we have a basic video in place. But just doing a simple video isn't really going to do the concept of Fusion justice. It works, and it's certainly passable, but we really want to step this up. So to improve things even further, why don't we bring in a border, something that we can really use to embellish the look of this intro. It's also going to serve to give us some good space to display our caption. So let's go to the image folder. Here you'll notice that we've included 2 borders for you to use. Both of these borders are taken from our Albums and Collages media source collection. And these are pre-made borders that you can use to display your images or video. These white regions that you see in each one of them are actually transparent, so that we can see any layers underneath that section. So, with that in mind, let's bring this single whole frame and add that to slide number 2. So hold down Control, then drag and drop that frame right onto the top of slide number 2. So here you can see we've already improved the look of things pretty dramatically. So what we need to do now is arrange the video so that it appears inside this particular frame. So let's start with that. So we'll double click on the slide to open the options, and my first stop is going to be in the Layers and then the Layer Settings tabs. And here what I'd like to do is select my video file, and I'm going to drag this layer and adjust its zoom value so that it fits comfortably right inside this frame on the right edge. Now let's select the frame, which is layer number 1, and you'll notice that this is already properly sized to fill my slide frame, so I don't need to make any adjustments to that. Now the one thing that you may notice is that this particular video has sound in it. So because of that, we're probably going to want to reduce the volume on this video so that we're not hearing it. So to do that, let's go over to the Video Settings tab, and here you can see that we have the volume adjustments we can make. So, since we don't want to use the video volume, let's take the volume for this video down to 0%. Now with that done, I'm almost ready to go. Before I finalize this slide, I'm going to need to settle on a time, and I'm also going to want to add some captions because this is going to be the introduction for my show. So first let's concern ourselves with the time. Now, as it's currently configured, this video is 8 seconds long. There's not a compelling reason to trim the video, so all we're really going to do is focus just on the slide time. So since this is an introduction, why don't we work with about 6 seconds of slide time, and about 1 second to transition out. We'll just do something nice and simple, just like that. And that'll make sure that we have enough time to get to the end of the slide before the video stops. So with that in mind, click on OK, and we have our new slide time. Now, let's bring some captions into this, because after all, this is our title slide, so we're going to want some captions to really round things out. So let's move up to the Captions and then to the Caption Settings tabs. Now here, I'm going to get things started just by creating the first caption. And what we want this to say is a bridal portrait. So the first caption will say, a bridal. Now, this particular caption and layout really doesn't work that well for what we're crafting here. So we're going to need to pick a font and a size and a color that really suits what we're doing. I'm going to be using a nice script font for this example. The one I'm using is called Beautiful ES. You may want to choose a similar one if you're following along. So I'm going to select that as my font choice. And now I'm going to increase the size of it so that it's a bit easier to read. And I'll pull it over here to the left, just about like so. The next thing that I'm going to do is disable italics, because with this particular font, italics doesn't make it any more italic than it already is. And I want to change the color of this font. I think I'm going to pick sort of a gentle green color for this. So I'll find my greens, and then I'll find something that's kind of a good light green, just about like so. Now with that done, I'm going to go ahead and create a second caption by clicking on the Add Caption icon. This one is going to say Portrait. Now, one of the things that works really well for captions is having some changes in size and coloration. So we'll use the same font, but let's change the color of this one back to its default white, and let's increase the size of this particular caption so that it's a little bit larger and more pronounced, just like so. And I think I might even adjust the bridle bit off to the side a bit more, just so that we have some more visual interest in the caption. Now finally, you're going to want to verify that your text effects are configured correctly. Right now I'm using a fade in and a fade out, but I have a normal effect of spacing out. That's probably not going to work that well for what we're doing here. So I'm going to change my normal effect to none. I need to do that for both the first and for the second caption. So with that done, click on OK, and let's see what we have for our introduction. There we can see we bring it in, we have the video and our caption. Now, I'm personally inclined to think that our caption could probably use a drop shadow. So I'm going to add that in just to finish things off. And with that done, now we have something that stands out even better against the background. That completes things nicely. So with this accomplished, now we need to move into the show itself. We have another video and 3 additional images to work with. Now, we just displayed a video, so why don't we offset the video a little bit by using some images? So we're going to get Atherton pick number 1 and Atherton pick number 2. Let's select both of these and hold down Control and drag them into slide number 3. That's going to create one new slide that has both layers attached to it. Now, we're already using frames, so let's continue with that frame look, and let's add in this 2-part frame to slide number 3 as well. So once again, hold down Control, drag, and drop that frame right on top of the slide. Now, before we go in and arrange these images, why don't we adjust the time a little bit? Let's go for a 5-second slide on this one rather than 6, but we'll stick with the 1-second transition. With that done, now we need to arrange the images into their individual frames, and let's add a little bit of motion to these still images just so that they pop a little bit more. So we'll double-click on the slide to open the options, and let's begin in the Layers and Layer Settings tabs. Here I'm going to select layer number 2, and I'm going to position this one inside the frame on the left, just like so. Then I'm going to select layer number 3, and I'll position this inside the frame over here on the right. Again, just about like so. So with their starting positions established, now let's go in and add some motion. So for this, we'll go to the Effects and then to the Motion Effects tabs. So starting with layer number 2, why don't we just add some simple zoom? So I'll just zoom in on this particular image layer just a bit, not more than 15% or so. And then for layer number 3, why don't we do the same? We'll zoom in on layer number 3, but we'll also pan down a bit so that we keep the bride's face centered inside that frame. So we have some zoom and some pan, all of which add some nice extra dimension to this particular slide. Then we'll click on OK. If we play what we have so far, we have our intro complete with video content. Then we move on to our next slide in the show, which features some images inside frames, just like so. And now let's create our last slide with the last of the media we have available, which is one picture and one video. And these two should complement each other very nicely. So I'll select my image here in this folder, and I'll drag it into the slide list to create slide number 4. Then I'll switch over to my video folder, and I'm going to select the video Atherton 1, and I'm going to add this as a layer to slide number 4. So remember, hold down Control, then drag and drop that video right on top of the slide. With that done, let's go back to the image folder. Let's select this 2-frame border again, and then let's add this as the third layer. So Control, drag, and drop. Now we need to arrange these individual layers inside their frames. So I'm going to open the options for this slide, and once again we're going to start in the Layers and Layer Settings tabs. For this one, I think I'd like to put the video up here in the upper left. So I'll drag and position the video file so that it fits within the frame here in the upper left. Then I'm going to take my image and I'm going to place it in the lower right. And I'm going to adjust the zoom value so that the main focal points of this image fit very nicely right there inside that frame. Now with that done, once again, if your video has audio in it, you're going to want to make sure you go to the Video Settings tabs, select that video layer, and turn the audio volume down to 0%. Now, if you want to hear the video or the audio, of course you don't have to do that, but for this particular case, we're going to add our own soundtrack to really finish things out, so we don't want to hear the video. Now finally, since the video is going to be moving around plenty on its own, let's go to the Effects and to the Motion Effects tabs, and let's just add a little bit of zoom to layer number 3. Again, right there in the ending position. And with that done, click on OK. So let's play back what we have so far. We have our introduction complete with video. Then we move on to a slide which features 2 images nicely complementing one another there inside the frames. And the nice thing about this transition is then we move through to new content but within the same frames. So it looks like the content changes whereas the frames don't. And once again, we integrate together both video and images. The last thing to do here is just to complement the show that we've created by bringing in a soundtrack. I'm going to be using the song I'll Be Waiting from our Albums and Collages Media Source title. You can use any song of your choosing to follow along. Just drag and drop into the soundtrack bar to import the audio. And at this point, we have what is a complete miniature show that really embodies some of the best principles of Fusion. Video, images, audio, composition, all very nicely assembled together to give you an excellent whole package that really does demonstrate the best of Fusion. You've completed your Fusion show, and at this point you are ready to start creating some output. That is, turn the show into something that you can demonstrate to your family, your friends, your clients, whoever that may be. So the fundamental thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to creating outputs after you've created a show utilizing Fusion is that your output doesn't change at all. When you select Create Output, you're given a very large array of various formats that you can use for your show. But the nice thing is, because ProShow treats your video content as layers, that means that your videos will translate directly to your output without having to make any custom changes at all. So the primary thing that you need to think of is just what output format is going to be the most appropriate for what you intend to do with the show. Now, one of the things that really stands out when you're talking about video content is you want that playback to be nice and smooth. And in a lot of cases, you're going to get some of the most smooth playback if you use something like a DVD or Blu-ray. These two are pre-rendered formats. Now, there are other pre-rendered formats as well, but they're both exceptional examples. What this means is that they are essentially video files themselves that are placed on a disc. So your content's going to look really good in either one, but keep in mind that Blu-ray is the option you're going to want to go with if you're working in high def. That is, whether you're bringing in high def video, you're using high megapixel images, any of that core content that goes into your show is going to be best served by creating Blu-ray. So you'll save your show, as I just did there, and then you're given the same kinds of output options that you'd find for regular disc format. You can customize your menu, choose which shows are included, and then you have some options to configure exactly how it's going to be put together. Now, one of the things that I think is important to note is that you do have just a few options that are specific to the videos that you include in your output. And that is your video clip output options when it comes to disk executable or output content. And then you also have this same thing available in executables in a slightly different form. But the encoding quality is just the general quality level, that is how sensitive it is to artifacts and things like that, that you have for your video clips. Now, without getting too technical, suffice to say that the basic explanation is that normal quality looks just fine and what you would expect. High quality makes a larger clip that's more refined so that there's less possibility for any kind of potential artifacts or small visual mistakes in the video. Now, as I said, this doesn't happen very often, but if you really want to make sure that you avoid it, the high quality selection will do the trick for you. But for just about any regular use, the normal quality option will do the trick. Now, when it comes to the executable, whether you are creating a PC executable or an auto-run CD, or simply including an executable on a disk format, for example, like Blu-ray, you'll find that you have some options specifically for video clip resolution down here in the quality and performance settings area. Video quality is talking about the quality level of the video included in your show. What this actually refers to is bitrate, which is the amount of data that's streamed to create the video. You have three options. Medium is the default. You can go up to high or down to low. Remember, it impacts file size. Higher is bigger, lower is smaller. Now, just beneath this, you have the video clip resolution. Medium resolution is the default setting and will always yield excellent results for you. However, if you want to make sure that it looks as good as possible, selecting the high resolution output option is always something you can do. Just keep in mind that anytime you select a high quality or high output option, that is going to increase the size of the file that you're creating by just a little bit or quite a bit, depending upon how long your show is. So you do have some video specific options that again will appear either in the Options tab or in the Executable tab, depending upon the format that you're creating. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to creating output is that if you're using any of the social media options like YouTube or uploading a show to Facebook or even including them on your own website in the form of a web show or a flash show, video content will work just fine. As I said, no matter what kind of output you create, your video files are going to be included in it and play as a natural part of the show. One final thing to keep in mind when it comes to output is that you can also create your own video files from your show. When you select video file, you can choose from some predefined video file types, or you can create your own custom type, which allows you to choose the actual format, and you can see that there's a wide variety of options there. And once you've chosen your format, you can even choose your compression type that's going to be used for that format. You can select your own resolution, frame rate, aspect ratio, and quality all the way across the board. One of the best things about creating a video using one of your shows is that you can take that video file and integrate it into another show. Because remember, ProShow uses video, no problem. So even if it's a video of your own show, feel free to include it in a show you're creating. That effectively can let you do a show within a show. Or perhaps, if you're putting a show together that demonstrates the kinds of things that you've done in the past, why not put one show together that features a bunch of video clips of other shows you've done? That's a great way to capture your portfolio inside a show, and it's a really excellent expression of the concepts behind Fusion. So remember, output is treated the same way regardless of whether you have video or not. There's just a few other options you can work with, and a few quality settings that you can adjust that are related specific to video. But everything else about it uses the same output configuration that you're already accustomed to using. We see Fusion every day on television, on the internet, in any kind of visual media. And the chances are you have a camera or a phone or some device like that that shoots videos and will take pictures, and this is by your side all the time. So you've probably already been thinking about Fusion without knowing what to call it. And now you know. Remember, just keep in mind that as you go forward and begin using Fusion in your shows, ProShow will handle your videos with no problem. Just remember, ProShow's not a dedicated video editor. So if you work on something that's almost entirely video, keep in mind that a dedicated video tool will do the job. And of course, always remember, Fusion will make your shows for your family and friends better, and if you're making shows professionally, it's gonna make you more money. Thanks for watching.